South African billionaire businessman and Confederation of African Football President Patrice Motsepe is almost solely responsible for the elevated status the sport enjoys globally. But even if he will be concerned about issues that have characterized the Africa Cup of Nations tournament currently underway in Morocco, issues such as poor attendance of matches and a lack of community engagement, our senior sports reporter Sfiso Ramara is with the CAF President in Rabat. Let's hear what they had to say.
Good afternoon to the viewers back at home. Now we've reached the business end of the Africa Cup of Nations 2025 in Morocco. I'm now joined by the President of CAF, Dr. Patrice Motsepe. He's a busy man. He must fly out to Tanja in the next few minutes. Let's hear what he has to say about the tournament so far. Thanks, Mr. President.
Thank you.
We've seen the entire first round. Your overall impression?
Well, I've just arrived this morning from South Africa because I had to attend a funeral, but it's good to be back. But it's also a moment of excitement in South Africa for football, and a recognition of the enormous success of South African football over the last few years. But of course, we are now at a stage where we play against the best football nations, not just in Africa, but also in the world. And we have to keep investing, particularly in our young boys and young girls, in our youth, and make sure that club football in South Africa, and of course my responsibility is South Africa and the continent, the whole of the continent, but work together more with the football leadership in South Africa. So the partnership between SAFA and the PSL is very important, and support their cooperation, ensure that there's also support from government because and the private sector. What is clear to me is that many of the African countries on the continent that have done exceptionally well have got enormous support from their governments and from their partnerships and from the private sector in particular. South Africa, as I've said on numerous occasions, should be a football powerhouse. We've got enormous talent, God-given talent that's excellent on the continent, amongst the best in the world. I mean, the skills and the ball control and just the capacity to dribble past opposition players. It's something that's inborn. You see it in the townships, in the rural areas, young boys and now, of course, as well, young girls just have this God-given talent. And that's what's required to compete against the best, as we will be doing the whole of the African continent. And South Africa, Bafana is playing tomorrow against a very big competitor. But we've got to look at this process in terms of the ongoing global competitiveness, the investment, and many of the African countries are identifying the enormous benefits, the jobs that football is creating, the huge financial and commercial rewards. The last AFCON in Ivory Coast, the country benefited $1.5 billion. So we have to make sure that in South Africa we look at football as an important tool to, of course, in the first instance, make sure that the quality of the PSL and our national team is world class, but also it creates jobs for our young boys and girls who are top football players, those who are employed by the football clubs, employed by the national team, the jobs that comes from tourism related to sports, and with increasing recognition of the enormous benefits, South African football will indeed be amongst the best in the world.
Let's talk about the two groundbreaking announcements that you made recently, increasing the prize money of the AFCON from $7 million to $10 million.
Well, I know from my days as president of Mamelodi Sundowns, you have to incentivize your players. And one of the most important ways to incentivize them is to say to them, if you win this match, we will double your salary. There's a direct benefit that goes into your pocket, more money for yourself, for your family, for those who depend on you. So when we increase the prize money, one of the prerequisites we emphasized was we want part of that money to find its way into the pockets of the players and the coaches. And it has delivered enormous results. We've also increased the prize money of the Champions League and the Confederations Cup. We don't want to announce that now. We'll announce that as soon as the AFCON is over. And we spent $13 million. You remember, when I became president, CAF owed $150 million. This is the money that we had to pay. We've paid all of that. And we've built enormous amount of resources, but that's partly because the partners and the sponsors recognize that the money is going where it's supposed to go. Football development, academies, football players, administrators, employees, and that the money is dealt with the highest degree of governance, of ethics, of integrity, and this is part of the legacy that we want to leave, because my term as president is going to come to an end. And part of my duty is to make sure that whoever takes over after I have left and the leadership continues the good work that we've all done together.
And the decision to have the AFCON every 4 years instead of 2 years?
People don't fully understand what we are doing there. We have had the AFCON every 2 years. What we are doing now is every year, and the AFCON involves 24 countries. Every year, you're going to have 54 countries every year, except the year of the World Cup. Because in the year of the World Cup, we want those 9 or 10 African countries to focus on winning the World Cup. We have to set high standards. We are ambitious people. But side by side with being ambitious is the hard work, the sacrifices, the investments we are prepared to make. So what's going to happen is every year, we're going to have the next AFCON next year in 2027 in Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. For the first time in the last 50 years is this competition going back to East Africa, because there's enormous talent. And then we've started a new competition called the African Nations League. 54 nations, not 24 as in the AFCON, 54 countries will participate in this competition. The best football players from the continent who are in Europe will be playing in Africa. That didn't happen in the past. They only played once every 2 years. Now we've got them every year. But the focus is to make sure that the enormous talent that we have on the continent, we show our people in Africa that African football is as exciting, as appealing, as rewarding as football in Europe and other parts of the world. But also, you also have to look at what we are doing within the broader concept of uniting, bringing together Africans from all over the continent, from different ethnic groups, from different racial backgrounds, from different religious backgrounds, and how through football we're encouraging Africans to trade together, to do business together, to create ties together, and to create a future on the continent, improve people's standards of living, create more jobs, create a greater sense of African partnerships, African growth, but of course work with the rest of the world, but it starts on the continent. So I'm enormously grateful. Many of the African governments have been working together and supporting what we've been doing. We've had to do a lot of education, and sometimes, to be quite honest, there wasn't a full recognition of the enormous potential, and it's our duty to educate, to expose them. And when governments and football supporters and football players in particular benefit and can see and touch and recognize what the enormous benefits are from football development and growth, and from investing in African football, and also to make sure that, when we go to the World Cup later during the year, which has also been part of our objective, that an African nation should win the World Cup. That's part of our objective, that we want the young boy or the young girl in Soweto, in Eastern Cape, in KwaZulu-Natal, in Limpopo, must dream of I want to play for the best football club in South Africa, I want to play for Bafana Bafana, I want to be champions of Africa, and I want to be champions of the world.
On a lighter note, Mr. President, you must be seen to be as neutral as possible. But you hinted earlier, tomorrow it's Bafana against Cameroon.
It's hard because as president, of course, I support and am proud and love every one of the 54 nations, and so I may not show emotions, but of course in the heart sometimes it goes faster, it beats faster or it beats slower, but at the end of the day, I mean, we should be proud of the players we have as a country, as a continent, and we should be proud of the ability of our players in the continent competing against the best in the world and winning at the highest level in the world. And also, what makes me proud as well is when you hear some of the biggest sponsors and investors of football in Europe saying to me and saying to the leadership, guys, we are so proud of what you're doing. The quality of the competition, the quality of football, the quality of infrastructure, the quality of the referees, the quality of VAR, match commissioners, the integrity of football. You have to be world-class in everything you do. We have to be the best, and we have that potential. We've proven it over and over again as a continent and as CAF, and we'll continue to prove it. And as I said, part of my duties is, I know from my days of being president of Black Business and president of business in the country, part of the focus is to make sure that we employ and work with the smartest and the brightest on the continent. And in the context of business in South Africa, it was with business in the country. But we've got to make sure that we've got a clear succession plan, because a leader never succeeds on his own. And part of the success of any leadership is how well are these institutions doing when we're not there anymore. Because there's a time to go and there's a time to leave and create space for the new group of leadership. But make sure that we set the best possible foundation. Because as I said, African football is more than just about what happens on the field of play. Of course, what happens on the field of play, it's enormously important, and we know we are as good as the best in the world, but it's also about bringing our people together in our countries, on the continent, moments of pride, moments of patriotic unity. Because when Bafana plays, it doesn't matter whether your football club is from I don't want to say Mamelodi, whether your football club is from Soweto or Mamelodi or Eastern Cape or KwaZulu-Natal or Limpopo, it's a moment of pride. They represent the best of us, and the same applies with any other country on the continent, and I'm excited that every one of the football nations will do very well.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Hello.
That's all we had from Dr. Patrice Motsepe. He says his heart is with Bafana, but he won't visibly show that during the game tomorrow. With that, back to you in studio.